Saf Dio Double. Salaam alaikum. Talk to me. No problem. I'm still doing some housekeeping. Eid Mubarak to you as well, man. I'm gonna going live on YouTube as well. Yeah, I can. I can. Alhamdulillah, I can. So you and I are good. Can everyone listening, can you guys hear me? Alaikum salam. Yeah, yeah. So set you upside down, bro. Okay, no problem. So everybody, walaikum salam, sisters. I see you guys are coming in. Look, for all of the sisters that are joining and the brothers, let me put this out there. This is an 18 and older conversation. If anybody is on this chat that's younger than 18, you don't need to be on this chat. Okay. So, any sisters or brothers that want to join us on this live, feel free to do so. You're more than welcome to join us and share your thoughts. Tonight's topic is, what value does a man bring? Right? What value does a man bring to marriage? That's the topic. I have some comments that were shared that I'll go over. Seth is going to share his perspective. Seth, I'm gonna take you out and come back in when you're ready. No problem. Just if you can hang up. There you go. No problem. I got you. Okay. So while Seth gets ready, anybody have any comments that they want to share? Any thoughts they want to bring up? Anybody want to join the live? Preferably anybody that is married or looking to get married, feel free to join. We're just waiting for Seth to come back on so he can share his thoughts as well. Give it a few more minutes. Being in his masculine frame and being able to perform. Yeah. One second, guys. Mm-mm. Feel free to continue to put in your thoughts about the value that a brand brings. And let me just reiterate, because I see that there's a few people in this live that are not 18. If you are not 18, you don't need to be in this conversation. It's a grown folk conversation. Tough love.
Can you hear me?
I can. So, for those of you that are listening, can you hear us clearly? Seth, you can see the chat too, can't you?
Yeah, I can see the text. I mean, I can see the chat and I can see the comments.
Okay, good. Okay, so somebody give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear us clearly, because I can hear Seth, he can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have 5 people in here now. Somebody let me know you guys can hear us before we get started. Because the last thing I want is for us to be talking and it's not going through, can't hear it. Okay, good. We got a thumbs up. Alhamdulillah. So, Seth, you ready? Because it's a grown folk conversation.
Let's do it. Turn my mic, turn my video up, I mean, my volume up. Okay. So yeah, what value? And I guess for me, I want to start more or less with the intrinsic value of a man or masculinity specifically.
Okay.
Because everybody knows about providing and everybody knows about protecting, but you know, we in 2023, we got the police. Women live in gated communities. They got doormen. So protection isn't necessarily a necessity for women these days. They have other resources for that. And then when it comes to the provision, certainly it's nice, but at least in the states, um, you know, women have just as much opportunity in the workforce as men do, and a lot of in some cases, specifically in the Black community, women are out earning men. So provision, although it's wanted, it's not necessarily needed. And I think the dating market shows that. I think statistically, 1 out of 4 marry in the Black community. I think so. And in America in general, just the marriage rate is going down. So you don't see that men and women necessarily needing each other. They may want each other, but they don't need each other. So I just want to talk about the intrinsic value that men offer women, just taking away protection, provision, and then also the bedroom. I mean, everybody needs that, but take those off of it because those things change. Um,
Before you
never.
Before you take those off the table, the question that I would have is, I know you and I and amongst our peers and our cohort that provision is a given. But amongst my client base, and I deal with majority Muslim women, that isn't always a given. Like the reality is, unfortunately, I have a significant number of Muslim women that are married and they're paying a significant amount of the bills.
Well, like I said, it just there's a lot of different factors involved when it comes to that because when you talk about provision, um, it's more about the lifestyle because if a woman is willing to, like a woman can be provided for easily. Now, can she be provided for the lifestyle that she wants? That's a different story. So, if a man can provide for himself, um, he can stick a wife in there too. If he living in a one bedroom studio, he can put a woman in there as well. Now, does she want? Is that the lifestyle that she wants, or is that lifestyle she want to go back to if she lives in a lifestyle that's more comfortable? So, I would question the when these women say they don't, men can't provide. Um, I would throw that with, can they not provide a lifestyle that they're comfortable with? If we look at our prophetic example, um, Khadijah had more money than the prophet, according to the seerah. So, and she, so that provision thing, although it's nice, and I think it's very important. I'm not taking that away, but um, if that is a top priority, maybe women may have to go into lifestyle. There's a man that can't necessarily get them what they want right away. So provision just goes into just a cap. I'm not saying that they don't. That's not a requirement. So don't take this out of context. But because I definitely understand the importance and the necessity for a man to provide. But to the lifestyle of the lifestyle woman will be, and that's a question you ask before you get married. Like, hey, what's if you used to a palace, then I may not be a good fit. You know, or the husband might be a good fit. So it all is based on what they're comfortable with, what they're used to lifestyle.
Yeah, I think what I'm finding is, unfortunately, I think there's a surface level amongst the masses. I think there's a surface level understanding. I think there's a surface level understanding of the deen, where that it's the habitual in terms of we pray, we fast. But I'm finding when it comes to marriage and to be very frank with Muslim men, um, again, outside of our cohort, you and I and our cohort are those that we connect with. There's suspect ideas around a man's provision and asking a woman to contribute. I'm not just finding it with one or two clients. I'm finding it with a significant number, and these aren't situations where women are asking for a substantial amount of money. Actually, what it is the cases that are coming to mind to me is sisters are willing to downsize and not keep up with the Joneses, wherein that the husband that is successful wants to keep up with the Joneses, but also is asking her to contribute. I have a number of cases like that.
So let me just summarize to make sure I understand. What you're saying is your client, you have a man who has the ability to take care of himself. Let's say he's in a 2-bedroom apartment, but to keep up with the Joneses, he wants to buy a house, and needs her to contribute to that house in order to keep up with the Joneses. He is not content with having her move in with him in his apartment.
Yeah. Or instead of just getting a 3-bedroom apartment, we're getting a 4 or 5 bedroom apartment in a part of town that is definitely nice, but we could downscale and go to a different part of the neighborhood, right? Go to another area where it's not as costly, right? Like that's what I'm finding is brothers are asking their women to contribute.
Well, look, I think that's just more or less a value thing, case by case basis. I think from the standpoint of it's all everything's negotiable.
Agreed.
There's no harm in asking. Yeah, there's no harm in asking, but you you got to know your market, and you got to know, you know, I mean, me personally, just from my experience, I think you may have a bigger house, but you won't have a happier home. In my opinion, if you put too much financial stress on a woman.
100%, 100%,
So,
a hundred
so
percent.
I'd
I
rather
think,
have yeah. So a bigger house doesn't equal a happier home. So I think that, but again, it just depends on. And then some women, just because of lack of trust, may want to contribute because in case of a divorce, they want to be able to have
some
say
equity.
so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's a conversation that needs to be had between the two people involved, and that conversation should probably have be made very early in the relationship, because that is for some people that's a deal breaker, and I think it's a really important point.
Yeah.
Or at the very, let me just say this, at the very minimum, it's a goal, because I have friends. I have a good friend of mine, or actually cousin, who when he married his wife, he was making six figures. Then he decided to go back to school to get an MBA. So he had to become the breadwinner for about 2 years. He got the MBA, and then she was retired,
Mm-hmm,
and he
mm-hmm.
took on the it was a conversation that was had where, hey, look, I'm taking one step back and take two steps forward, and she was educated and had the ability to hold down the fort
Mm-hmm.
while he was reinvesting into himself. I mean, they didn't have any children, so they were able to do that. But those kind of things. So I don't want to make people feel that if a man doesn't provide or have the ability to provide, it's the difference between not doing it or not being able to doing it, not being able to do it versus not wanting to do it.
And also not understanding it's your right, it's your obligation to do it. See, I guess
Absolutely.
I think the point that I'm making is you're right. There's always a deal that can be made, and there's room for negotiation if both parties want to negotiate. 100%. But I'm just saying that we need to begin from the foundation of it's your obligation.
Absolutely.
And
No.
I think that is where it gets a little blurry with some, is that we're not starting from the standpoint of it's your obligation. Like, yes, it's my obligation. And then if I need you to contribute, then that's a conversation. I can't demand it, but we need to start from the foundation of it's my obligation. And what I'm seeing is some murkiness with some brothers around the foundational principle that it's his obligation. That's the part
Well,
that's problematic.
okay, so we're talking about when you say the murkiness around it. Are you talking about culture? Or are you talking about deed? I mean, what are we talking about
So
as
so
far as
so so our point of departure is just Islamically dean wise, it's your obligation. Period. If not, then don't get married.
well, I guess who disputes that? I guess what's the deal? Because we know there's examples where in the Quran, chapter 4, verse 34, God said God made men to maintain the protection of women. So that's a popular verse that men and women understand as far as men having that responsibility. What's the deal that says
So,
I don't have that responsibility?
so there is no delil that says that. And I think this is where I'm saying the point of departure is that it is the obligation. What I'm saying is at times that point of departure is not there. It's not that it's the conversation, that it's the obligation. We already start coming in with the cultural element, whether it be a cultural element from back home or whether it be a perceived normative understanding in the States or in the West that it takes two families or two incomes, right? And
Well, it
so
takes two. Again, it just goes back to the lifestyle that you want. If you want to live in it depends. If you're making, if you're on a teacher's salary, but the woman and the man have agreed to take that sacrifice, or if someone is in school. I mean, to me, these things are very, in my opinion, trivial as long as the plan and the destination is on the same course. I mean, there's people I have friends who got married in college, right, to protect themselves from Zena, but and they were housed under their tuition, right? But there was a plan in place that said, hey, once I graduate, this is what the plan is, and it was agreed upon the family. It was just their own opinion. So
Yeah,
to me,
I
I
think
understand.
I think what you're
I don't
saying.
want to be.
I think what you're saying is you're still starting from the standpoint of the obligation is on the man, and from that
What?
it's what I'm hearing from you is even in that example, they started from the foundation that the obligation is on the man, and then they're going to negotiate what's best.
That's correct.
Right. And you and I agree on that. What I'm saying is, what I'm hearing though is there are brothers that are not starting from that place. And how this comes to me and my role as a coach and dealing with emotions is because on how it gets to me is I have sisters that have insecurities within themselves that they end up accepting that. So they don't start from the place of departure that they should, that this is an obligation on him. And I'm okay with negotiating something that's better for our future together. What I have is I have sisters that have insecurities, have issues with self-worth. So they're okay with starting from a standpoint of this is a 50-50 thing and not it's a his obligation thing.
Okay, yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying that's a loaded comment because it's circumstance. Like, let's say the woman has 3 children and she's coming to get married. Well, those 3 children, if she's not getting child support, that's not the new husband's responsibility.
Of course, of course. That's a totally different conversation. For sure.
So you're saying that you're talking about two childless people coming together.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then that's just a matter of there's no compulsion in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
If he wants a 50-50 wife and you have a choice. So and look, depending on her sexual market value, it may be a good choice because that's also to the equation as well. My dad's a physician. He always told me, pretty women don't become doctors; they marry them, right?
Mm.
So it's sexual market value is unfortunately the world we live in. It go for both men and women.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. So you negotiate, you take the best deal you can get, and you move on. And the market typically tells you what you're worth, not your own, not your mama, not your daddy, not your friends. So to me, I want to make it rigid from the standpoint of if a man, um, if a man is what do you call it? We all agree that the man's responsibility of it, but if a woman, I also don't want women to um, miss out on a good guy because he ain't there yet. That's just the reality.
So how do you measure that though? Because I think that gets very tricky. Because that's one of the things that I tell sisters in the very beginning. I give sisters a checklist. I give them a clear checklist of what to look for. And that checklist in the very beginning is one, his knowledge and application of the deen. You got to look for that. You cannot be flexible on that. Two is the financial stability. Can't be flexible on that. And three, his focus and direction. Where is he taking you? If those three things, you have to be like inflexible on. He needs to have some level of clarity and footing in those. And the other two, so I give them five, and the other two is fitness and finesse. Like you want the guy to have some level of swag, he can talk something. His diddy bop is good. You want that, right? To whatever degree. You can be flexible with that, right? And his fitness, right? You can be flexible with that. But what you can't be flexible with is his knowledge of the deen and application, his financial stability, and his focus and his vision. Like, what's the blueprint? Where's he trying to take you? Because if you sign up for something and the first three got red flags, that's problematic. You getting what you sign up for?
Again, yeah. I feel you. I mean, it's tough because
Apologies. So my question for you would then be, when you say a brother, you don't want a sister to miss out on a brother that may not be there financially, but is a good brother. My question to you, which could help the sisters that follow me and listen, is how do they tease that out? How do they discern this guy is actually a good guy, even though financially he's suspect?
Right. So to your point, his plan. Is he in school? Is he in an apprenticeship? Where is he financially? Right. A lot of times maybe he makes some poor decisions in business. Maybe he has to pay child support. These are all factors that come into play. It's not just, so you gotta assess what's his plan? What's his get out of debt plan? What's his 3-year plan? Me, I always take things back to the Quran. When Moses was being evaluated by his father-in-law, his father-in-law said, till the land for 8 years, it'd be better if you do 10. So it allowed his father-in-law to assess his work ethic, to see where he was. At the time, this is when Moses left Egypt. He was, after he murdered the guy, or killed the guy rather, and he was destitute. So this man, just brought him back in, didn't know him from Adam. So you have to assess his you ask questions. But, no question about it. Got to have a plan. Got to have some provision. And it just may not be a good fit. You may just catch him. And you may have to, he may be Mr. Right, just not Mr. Right now. And I tell women that I got, nieces and sisters and cousins, and I tell them that all the time. May gotta throw them back in the water. And so so I'm big into not Mr. Right, maybe Mr. Right, but not Mr. Right now. That's huge for me. So I would recommend women take that to heed. Not just just put them to the side and find the next suitor. Like just, and when he's ready, he'll hit you up.
Yeah, I think that. So again, the reason why I give those three as the ones to be inflexible with, again, knowledge of Deen, practice of Deen, financial stability, and focus and direction.
Yeah, but the only thing that just concerns me is that and maybe I'm in a privileged environment as far as where I live, but I mean, the only way a man wouldn't be able to provide a roof on their head is if he living at home with moms. And that's off the rip, a red flag. Unless, like I said, he's in school, that's some hard times, but I don't know any circumstances.
Nah. Okay, so let me give you a couple. I can, and this isn't just within the African American community at all. Like the majority of my client base actually is South Asian and Arabs, and I can tell you a lot of not a lot, but a good number that I come across oftentimes leave the home early. And don't go the traditional route of education, are out in the streets, living it up, and they blow their early 20s and late 20s. And so they mismanage, they blow their early 20s and mid 20s, and then start waking up in their late 20s, early 30s. And so the point with that is, yeah, can you manage to get a minimum wage paying job? And yeah, can you find a 1-bedroom, maybe 2-bedroom apartment that is adequate, for yourself? But in all honesty, would you give your daughter to that brother?
But again, everybody can't play the reindeer games. You got to move on. You know what I mean? Like if he can't meet the standards of, if he made those decisions, you got to sit this one out. So he's just not there yet.
That's the point, and that's the point for me. My point is, like, he ain't there yet, and yes, can he manage to have a roof over his head, and he can bring a woman into a 1-bedroom, maybe 2-bedroom apartment? Yeah, but in reality, as someone who's a father, who's married, like, diapers cost money. cotton to clean diapers costs money. You know what I mean? Like, as the Brits say, the nappies cost money. So like you can't like get.
There's no pushback over here. Even in the case of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he didn't marry Khadijah until she found out he was her top earner.
Mm,
He would give him the money, and he would flip it and come back, and then he'd flip it and come back, and
mm,
he'd flip it and come back, and maybe she started giving him some restricted stock options in the company. Obviously, ultimately, once they married, she gave him all the money. So she supported him in her campaign with her heart, her soul, and her wealth.
alhamdulillah.
But that was earned.
Alhamdulillah.
So even in the regard where he may have started off with more money, or she may have started off the relationship with more money, but he became her top earner. And at some point, she said, well, maybe I should just sit this one out, let you run the company. So that's kind of like so no pushback. So provision is there. I just don't want it to be rigid, rigid to the point where you may have two people in college and they're trying to practice, do the right way. So
No.
in absence of money, if there's a sound plan that mature adults, wali's have all agreed upon, it ain't an end all be all if he ain't got the six figure money off the rip.
100%. I'm with you 100%. As long as there's a plan and there is demonstrated. For me, this is how I view it. As long as there is a plan and there is actionable, tangible actions that have been taken that he has demonstrated. And if not,
100%.
then as you say, not everybody can play in the reindeer games, man. He need to fall back and catch the next Christmas.
Exactly. Yeah. So provision is important from that context. So we agree there. We provided some context there, and as I said, from women, advice to your women. Men know men. Women don't.
Yeah.
So you have your brother, have somebody talk to him, and again, with your assessment from a woman's standpoint, is you got to understand that you may love the guy. Again, he could be Mr. Right, just not Mr. Right now. So be patient. Let him tour the land for 6 months, a year, because two things gonna happen. If he feels that you're worth it, he gonna till the land. If he don't think you're worth it, he gonna bounce.
Yeah.
Either way, you win. You can't lose.
Yeah.
You can't lose. So you see what you see what he's worth.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. And I think that goes back to him tilling the land is the tangible, right? The actionables that let you know that he's about the plan and he has the discipline to bring it into fruition, right? Because
that's an indicator of future behaviors, past behavior.
there you go. So talk to me. So we agree on provision. You said you wanted to look at the intangibles. Is that what you said, or the intrinsic?
Yeah, because the intrinsic. Because what happens is, all right, at least in America, at least I was just talking to a friend last night. People in America aren't really getting divorced over it's a lot of irreconcilable differences. That's there's not a lot of infidelity going on. It's just a lot of irreconcilable differences. We grew apart. We're not on the same page. And you got people who both, what do you call it, pious Muslims, they fast, they're the people, they just can't get along. And so I always feel like there has to be a certain degree of polarity in a relationship for it to work. This happens in sports all the time. When you have two people playing the same position, there's a quarterback controversy. One person's irrelevant. The best teams that win is when everybody not only plays their role but embraces their role, and they work off one another. You got the Kobe and Shaq. that whole combination, inside outside game happens all the time. So there has to be some polarity that creates balance.
Mhm.
So when I talk about intrinsic value, that's where the polarity is, because eventually nature's always going to see its way through. Natural law is going to conquer everything. And so I feel like with the Quran, all it's doing is providing a cheat code and explaining what already exists in natural law. So when I talk about the intrinsic value that men and women offer each other, Allah talks about, he articulates it, but it's still hard to deal with because you got um, social conditioning, um, trying to make things neutral, trying to make things opposite, topsy turvy. And I think that's where the change comes. That's why we have to submit. I mean, we have to have a certain degree of dysfunction to appreciate the function. You can't have mercy without corruption. You can't have good without bad. So we have to have poor examples to strive for the best examples. So that being said, I think there's just some intrinsic value that men and women offer naturally that make men more, that provide edification for men and fulfilled, and women naturally benefit from that. So I just want to talk about those things.
Give me some examples.
So I think that if you ask the average woman, and so I'm saying most, not all, so the all police don't come for me. But if you ask the average woman, would you like to buy your own car or have your husband buy you a car? Most of them would say, I would want my husband to buy me a car. If you ask the average woman or most women, you want to open your own door, or you want your man to open the door for you? Men is the exact opposite. I can buy my own car. I can open my own door.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that. So that would be, in my opinion, an example of leadership. I think that if a woman, most women don't want to have to plan the date. Most women want to chase the butterfly, and the man remove the obstacles out the way while they chase the butterfly.
Mm.
So taking that lead, being the first to do something. If there's a bump in the night down the stairs, you go downstairs first, not me. So just taking that lead, I think that's an intrinsic value of a leadership thing. And I'm not thinking that women can't be leaders, right? So I want to be very clear that women can be leaders as well in their own right, but as it pertains for men and women, we have to in marriage, we don't drink the milk. We gotta buy the cow first. Did you hear me?
Yeah, you. All I heard was about not drinking milk, and I'm vegan, so I hope we're talking about oat milk or almond milk.
No, I'm saying. No. I'm saying, another example of taking the lead is that we have to get the dowry first before the marriage. We don't get to taste the milk. We have to buy the cow first.
Right.
It is.
Right.
So we have to, and Allah says specifically, if you pay the dowry and you don't consummate the marriage, it's better for her to keep the dowry. Did you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's.
So we have to be vulnerable first. We have to be the ones that take the, and this is what it is. We have to be the ones that take the lead first. We have to put ourselves out there first. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting, this leadership piece. So for me, I think the value that men bring, if I had to summarize it into one thing, it would be stability. Right? Stability emotionally, stability financially, physically, and spiritually. Like stability in all areas. And I think for men to do that, they have to have that stability within themselves and have to have established that prior to getting married. Because when you don't,
Well,
it shows in the marriage, and women are keen on seeing inconsistencies.
let me take it one step further because stability, that may, I like that word. I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to use the integrity because integrity means you walk your talk. And normally they say you can't, the first person you have to establish integrity with is yourself.
Mhm.
So when you look at leaders, personal trainers, professors, the reason why people don't have a problem following them, going back into that leadership role, is because they've already done the work. They've earned the right to teach a class. They've earned the right to lead a group of fitness, aspiring fitness folks. So, you have to do it. You have to prove yourself first before you can prove it to others. So I think stability, integrity, like integrity is number one on my list. And you walk the talk. And I remember having a conversation with, um, one of my nieces, and she said, I'm not all about that talk. I want a man to just do it. And I said, yeah, but doing it is not integrity. And because integrity is, I told her, well, what's better? To say, what's better in sports? Or to say, hey, to just go down there and throw the touchdown? Or before the play happens, go to the opponent and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down there, 2-minute drill, and I'm going to score the touchdown. To walk your talk, that's integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you do it, nobody's expecting it. But to say something's going to happen and then bring it to fruition, that's the part that's impressive because that goes back to you had a plan, you prepared, and you executed. Versus just doing it, it could have happened by accident. You could have got lucky. There was no foresight in it. So I think
but I agree with you. I agree with you, and I think exactly what that last part you made speaks to my point. Because when you're lucky, it's rare that you're lucky consistently.
Correct.
Right? And like I said,
Correct.
Women have a natural tendency to be able to discern and see inconsistency. And
it's a protection for them.
Right. And so inconsistency, though, I think also feeds into or is in alignment with exactly what you're saying with integrity. Because if you don't have integrity, in essence, what you have is a lack of consistency between what you say and what you do.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, that's why this stability piece is so crucial. Because, and another way it's shown itself that I think you might be interested in hearing is over the years, more lately than before, I have a number of sisters reaching out to me, and they want to calibrate their uh, femininity and masculinity. They don't like the fact, and they realize they're self-aware enough to realize that they are a bit more masculine than they desire to be. And one of the things that I've had to share with them in listening to them is I agree with them that they are showing up in a masculine way often. But what I'm also reminding them of is to be conscious of the type of man you are entertaining. Because one of the reasons, not always, but one of the reasons why the masculine may be showing up and remaining is because of the type of man you're allowing yourself to entertain. See, when you're, one second. So when you're dealing with a man that doesn't have integrity, doesn't bring stability, then by default, if you have already been in that masculine, it's going to trigger that and bring that out because a part of the masculine is bringing the integrity and the stability. So again, not 100% of the times, but one of the things that I am seeing is when they're dealing with men that don't have or don't bring stability for a plethora of reasons, it's understandable that that masculinity comes out.
So let me let me get some clarification on stability, because stability is can be, and I'm talking, from trying to understand or trying to help women discern. Stability can be a bit misleading, because there may be men who may have stable jobs, and that's essentially what a lot of people, maybe a stable home, but the stability emotionally may not be there, right? And it's hard for women to see that. So the stability part, but one thing that is easy for women to realize, whether they want to accept it or not, is that integrity piece. That integrity piece is, you can tell. I mean, guys, you got friends who they follow through every single time. You got friends who, if they say it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And then you got other friends who cross the flakes. Tony the Tiger, they don't come through. But we all got them. Mm-hmm. So, and both of those two people may have great jobs, great careers, great homes, maybe flourishing, but you just know that one has the integrity that you need, and so a lot of times when people look at stability, it can be misleading. And from a woman's perspective, they can sometimes see what they want to see. But like you said, if a person is not following through, if a person is inconsistent, that integrity piece pops out.
Yeah.
And maybe they confuse and they say, well, how does this person not have integrity, but they have a stable job? Or, I got friends who are super flakes. Man, they've been in their job for 15, 20 years, because that's just how it is. I know doctors who are flaky. So I just, the stable thing, it could be misleading. So I'm just.
But does that bring stability to the spouse? See, that's the if we're talking from the lens of the spouse. So yeah, if you can demonstrate stability at your job, kudos to you. I commend you. That's important. It really is. But I think if you don't afford your spouse, your wife, stability, it's going to show up emotionally.
Yeah, but I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody who has integrity and is broke. I don't know anybody who has integrity who's not taking care of their responsibilities. I just, the people that I think of in my life who have integrity, they thorough people.
Okay, and
I'm saying this from a standpoint to help your female audience discern, because sometimes a woman may see a nice car, a nice crib, wealth, and they may say, oh, he's stable, but he may lack integrity. Or, because women get finessed. I mean, the money is a very alluring feature for a lot of women. Like, so I'm just trying to help them discern between, in other words, I feel like everybody who has integrity is stable, but everybody who's stable doesn't have integrity. But you would know better.
The only pushback I would give with that is just when it comes to the emotional piece.
Well, okay, fair enough. So I think the emotional piece, even people who lack emotional intelligence, if they have integrity, I feel like they're easier to work with. Like, I feel like if they have, I use the word integrity and God consciousness interchangeably, because if a person has real, true God consciousness, I'm not talking about religiousness. There's a big difference. God may pray 5 times a day and beat their wives on the weekends. I'm talking about a person that has true humility and God consciousness. I think that they're not arrogant. You can tell them about themselves. Doesn't mean they're going to be perfect. I mean, going back to the whole leadership comment, it's like you're saying that some of your female clients, when a man doesn't, I think you said this, when their masculinity surfaces due to his inability to lead, or was it another reason?
Yeah. See. Okay. So let me give you kind of context. What I mean is this.
Okay.
So look, I believe a man can have integrity in terms of he says he's going to do this and then he follow throughs and he does it. I believe that's possible. But I also believe that a man can be well intended, be God conscious, but also, unfortunately, be abusive. And the reason why, and I'm not in any way condoning it, what I'm saying is that can be there because men need to learn how to regulate their emotions.
No doubt.
All right. And so if you don't know how to regulate your emotions, you can be well intended, but then still respond in an unhealthy way to your wife.
For sure. But I think people in general need to learn how to regulate their emotions. But I think more
I,
than
I agree. I agree with you, but I think you would agree with me as well that there's a larger ownership on us as men.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I think that and a man's inability to regulate his emotions is a red flag.
Agreed. And so a man inability to regulate his emotions does not afford his wife stability. And
Same
that
thing.
and that's the part that I'm saying. That's why I'm saying that for me, if I had to summarize the value that a man brings, is stability. And if a man
Okay.
can bring you stability in terms of emotions, financial, physical, and spiritual, I think you got a winner. Does that mean he's going to be perfect? No, you don't need perfection for stability. But what you
Yeah.
do see is you see consistency and you see that integrity. But if you don't know how to regulate your emotion as a man, I think that's when women see the inconsistencies the most.
I agree with you, and I'm going to add to the fact that, um, and this is my personal experience, that women subconsciously, and it's subconscious, test the man emotionally
100%.
to to assess his degree of emotional stability.
100%.
And I'm gonna add to the fact that in my I like your word stability. I'm also going to say that another um, another what do you call it, offspring or proponent of that stability is it provides balance for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
It helps her manage the chaos in her mind.
Mm.
But in order for her to do that, and more importantly, in order for her to be vulnerable to trust that to give him access or agency for him to do that, he has to be stable and he has to prove his stability
Mm-hmm.
to her. So I'm dead on that. I agree with you. So I think stability. Actually, I think that's two different things. So I think we have the integrity thing, which just shows plan, execution, follow through, and I think the stability is more or less for technical line was the. Yeah, actually, I think that's just a never step.
Yeah, I would agree with you. In my mind, when I'm hearing us walk through it, I think they're two separate things, but I think there's synergy between them and that they're intertwined. So I don't think you can have stability without integrity,
Yeah.
right? I don't think a woman can feel um, stability. I don't sense that a woman uh, can feel the stability if there's a lack of integrity.
So here's the caveat. So you have
And
so
and, and one thing, to my brother Rico Suave, look, with a name like that, trust me, we're gonna get to your comment because I gotta give you a salute on the name. Rico Suave is in the comments and he has two comments. We're gonna come to yours though, brother, because that IG name, you got to give that brother some love for the name Rico Suave. You know. So talk to me. You were about to say, oh, you want to take his comment now? We can do that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Well, look, let's go back up because he had another comment as well. He said, "What finesses is what they hear. Unfortunately, those without scruples and a slick tongue can bamboozle many." True in that. And Seth, I think that speaks to what you said earlier in terms of men know men.
Yeah.
Men know men. So, sisters, if you don't have a man in your support system, I'm going to say it all the time. If you don't have a man in your support system, the likelihood of you getting swindled, bamboozled, and finessed by a man is higher. You have to have
Yeah.
a man in your support system.
Well, I think the men have to be patient with the women because, if a woman likes a guy, you know, then, like, again, I'm going to use the Quran as an example. The women brought Moses to their father.
Mhm.
Their father didn't go out and find Moses.
Mhm.
So a lot of times what men will do is they make it impossible for the brother.
Mhm.
So you can't. So if someone is interested in your daughter, you can't. If he ain't there right today, again, he ain't Mr. Right now. He could be Mr. Right. Let him till the land.
Mhm.
Talk to him. Build him up. And women need to have the patience of letting him till the land. That is so important. Sometimes, guys were very dismissive for whatever reason, and the women are impatient. I've dealt with that within my own family, as far as not giving enough time to um, let a man till the land because they want the nikah to happen tomorrow, and or the man just getting shot down too quickly when we should have given them more time. So both instances. But I think if the woman brings the man, I think that's the first start.
But so 2 points on that. 2 points on that, and
Let me say before I forget, because when we pick the man for the woman, it don't ever work. They feel it's forced upon. I don't have a choice. It's there's resentment that builds later, especially in the West. How it is in the East and the West. Women choose the men. There ain't no arranged marriages over here.
so 2 points. I think there's 2 points that have to be acknowledged. One, there is this element. There is an element of sisters having the discernment to choose properly, to choose from a space of uh, what this dean ask of them versus choosing from an emotional void. So that's one, right? And then two, on the side, the other thing would be so one is sisters having proper discernment with the type of men they choose to bring home. The second, though, is brothers just have to be more strategic. So I agree with you. The brother has to be able to till the land, and the father should allow him to till the land. But Habib, you got to come to the father with an understanding that you should till the land and understanding why it's important for land to be tilled, and at least some knowledge and skill set of how to use the tools. You just can't show up with at the door like, because I'm Muslim, you should accept me.
No. You can show up at the door if you're willing to learn and work. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there are some men that show up and they say, "Look, I don't know how, but I'm willing to learn." there's other guys that show up, and as soon as okay, come here tomorrow. You want to learn? Okay, we start tomorrow at 7 o'clock. He ain't there. You don't want to learn. So he doesn't want you. So that's just the reality, and that's a tough pill for women to swallow.
Yeah, yeah. See, I think I may be a bit more. Look, man. Look. You and I go back to high school. So you. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Elementary. You're right. You're right. You're right. My point is to say, look, you know a brother's humble beginnings. So my point is, man, like when you want something, man, you go after it. Same thing with a woman. And so you can't just show up without some skill sets and some drive and something that can say, you know what, like a resume, I did this. This is where I'm going. This is Habib, look, man, bro, I said this a million of times, man. The reason, one of the reasons, now look, mashallah, I like to think the reason why my wife married me, one is because of my looks, mashallah. But the reality is, one of the things that she mentioned to me is when I sat down with her, I had a plan. And I walked her through my plan and what I have been doing to get to where I want to go.
Yeah, how old were you when you got married to her?
In my 30s. And so my point is this, and my point is this. But getting to that point was work I was putting in my 20s as well, working on me.
So, right. So, and part of that work was trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that work was experience, and so I don't disagree with you. I think that the onus is on the. I mean, I think we're focusing on helping women discern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that number one, a woman has to be honest with herself. As men, everybody got to be honest with themselves and say, look, are you okay with, are you okay with trusting the Wali? And I'm saying that 90% of women are not.
Mm.
Which is a preview for, like, if you don't trust your parents, you don't trust your Wali, eventually you're not gonna trust your husband. And you may not just be comfortable, you may have trust issues. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I have people in my life, I call them the Jedi Council, right? Mm-hmm. And I tell them, we have conversations about, what I have decisions. And if they tell me to do something that's against my opinion, I follow their decision. Mm-hmm. Because I trust them. And I think, I was talking to, my cousin about this. Men and women are different in this regard. He said that it's easy for men to submit. It's hard for us to serve. And for women, it's hard for them to submit. It's easy for them to serve. We can take instruction. You tell me to do it, you do it. It's easy. We don't, like, for the most part, we're coachable. We take it on. We can do it. We don't have, like, but when we have to, like you said earlier, serve, lead, do that kind of stuff, that's a bit of a challenge for us. We have to work on it.
I got to push back on that because I maybe I'm hearing you wrong. You're saying for men, it's difficult for us to serve, but what is it that we do well?
We submit.
Interesting, because when I hear that, man, when I think of myself and my cohort, those in my circle, the men that I relate with and I connect with, they're all serving. Like they're all like they're out hustling, they're out doing what they need to do. They've gotten the education, they're grinding in their profession, they're moving up in their career.
Yeah, I know.
And in doing that, they're doing that, and then they're serving their family.
But is that the majority of men or the minority of men?
Oh, okay. You have a point. You're right. That is the majority, because that's actually one of the points that's here on YouTube, where sisters is pointing out that the type of men that we're describing are few and far between.
Exactly. So that's why I said for men, that servant standpoint, whether it's because of ego, whether it's because of bravado, whether it's because of being vulnerable or whatever, to serve is difficult for us. It's difficult for us. So the people who do, they stand out. They're outliers. You call it servant leadership.
Mm.
For the team that I manage, I put their needs before my own. So that's just how it is.
I think that has to be. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, to me, I don't. It's hard for me off the top of my head right now. It's hard for me to see how you can have a functioning, healthy family wherein that the man is not serving the family.
And that's why we don't have. That's why we have broken families. That's why you have so many female clients. So that's where that's where the issue is. So that's what I'm saying. To be in that service space, it requires depth. It requires a man to dig a little bit deeper.
Mm.
And then alternatively for women to have to submit to take instruction from a man to be that's tough for her. That's a challenge for her. So
and why is that? Why do you think that is? Is that because it wasn't there with the father, or what do you think that is?
I think it just goes back to I think it's a variety of things, right? In my opinion, but it could be maybe comes from a broken home. They never had that experience before. The thing about leadership is, and you mentioned this earlier. I meant to comment on it, but like when a man's in a leadership role, and you only learn this really by being a leader yourself. You have to accept the fact that your leader will make mistakes. Your coach will lose games. And your response to the loss is vital to the next game. Mm-hmm. So when you lose, do you badmouth the coach, or do you boost his ego and cheer him up and say, "We'll get it next time"? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's crucial. It reminds me in the case of the Quran when the Prophet lost the war. I can't remember which one. The one with the archers. When the archers did not leave. I think it was.
That's better. The Battle of Badr.
Battle of Badr. Yeah, they lost that, right, with the archers when they left. So they lost that battle, and that was an important loss because a lot of people turned their heels on the Prophet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He lost the battle. He ain't the messenger of God. I'm out. Mm-hmm. And it was good. And other people, they said, "We still believe in you. We still believe in you because we failed. We didn't. You told us what to do, and we abandoned our post." So the plan was sound. The execution wasn't there. Which happens in sports. Players play. Soldiers fight wars. And that's strategists. So the player can draw the play up, and you can drop the football. That ain't the coach's fault, but the coach is ultimately the one that gets the blame. Players, when teams win, players get the credit. When teams lose, the coach gets fired. That's just how it is. So back to that point is that how do you respond to leaders? And I think in that regard, I think sometimes women have a hard time with that because when you're at your boss and your boss makes a poor decision, you don't tell your boss, "Hey, I got it from here, boss. Sit this one out. I'm gonna do this way." No, you respectfully say, "Hey, maybe we should try it this way next time." Be a trusted advisor. preserve their ego because ultimately they're in this position for a reason, number one. And in the case of a husband and wife, you've elected him in that role. So it's in your best interest to support and build him up and be his biggest cheerleader. And I think that component, to your point before, is that women sometimes don't pick men based on their integrity, their stability, their leadership. So they're already screwed. When the moment there's some turbulence or there's a lost battle, you know,
Yeah.
they turn around.
Yeah.
Either one.
And a part of it is on them for choosing poorly in the beginning, right? But then the other part is like this is the accountability piece. You saw all of those inconsistencies, i.e., red flags, before you got married. Why did you get married to him? Why did you still choose him? And see,
because they want to fix them. They want to fix him, not knowing that he's supposed to fix you.
so I think that speaks to the problem. I made a post about red flags, and one of the things that I said is it's like getting on the plane knowing that the engine needs to be repaired in flight. If you get on the flight knowing that the engine is going to have to be repaired mid-flight, you should expect turbulence, and you should expect that this thing may not, you know it may not go as we plan. We may not get to our destination, right? And so what I find with a lot of the not all, but a good number of the sisters that I work with, like one of the things that I've said often is I may not have helped a lot of sisters get married. I have helped some, but I've definitely helped a lot of sisters avoid the wrong man, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes the red flags have been was just glaring red flags. But the reason why it comes to me is because it's the emotional work that needs to be done. It's that lack of self-worth that then opens you up or exposes you to accept the thought of lowering your standards, because in reality you believe you can only get what is in front of you, right? So you lower your standards to that and you stay with that. But that in all honesty is not on the brother. That's on the sister for having and accepting and not knowing how to de-escalate the thinking.
Right. And like you said, to that point, it starts with if she had a better, if she went, when you do the work, you don't accept the BS.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the key. I think it also goes to the point of, you know, and I want to say this very properly, but if women understood and embraced the fact that they were born to be protected, not protectors, I think they would choose differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed. And let's look at some of the comments here we have here. So let's go back. Rico said it's a skill set that has lacked development in a single parent household. Those of us raised that way have an uphill battle to develop the skill after recognizing the lack thereof. Habib, I totally agree with you. My father was a dope dealer, and literally had aspirations of me following his lead. So I learned everything growing up what not to do. The blessing in that is I saw the emotional effect of what happens when you're a man and you don't have a blueprint and direction in life. So he set me up in that regard to um, to see what can happen when you don't have vision and direction. So it propelled me to go out and develop that for myself. Um, there's another comment. The sister Strive and Ukti says, Assalamu alaikum, sis. She says, I married my husband when he was 24 and I recognized his potential. And I would assume, sis, and please feel free to come on or leave in the comments. I would assume though that your husband, Because you recognize his potential, you were able to recognize the utility of his vision, of his plan. He had a blueprint. He had something he was telling you where he was going, right? And that's the point what I'm saying. Show up to the door with a plan. That's what men need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Re-
Definitely.
Rico is saying, if I hear the logic, we fall in line. Is what I look for. It looked from that. It was what I took from that. True
Yeah, I think he's
leadership.
talking about like the submission thing. How it's easy for us to submit.
Yeah, and then he says the majority are performative in their masculinity. I agree with you on that. Um, Definitely agree with you on that. Let me read this other thing. So on YouTube, I got a response that says the type of men you are describing with regards to this stability of emotion, finances, etc., is few and far between, even with older men. And then it goes on to say, since you since you're talking about what do men bring to marriage, this is earlier on, and these men would be a lot younger and greener in all areas. I think she's talking about the areas that I mentioned: emotional, finances, and spiritual and physical. I agree they should all have these qualities, but it is not reaching to require from much earlier age. So what I'm gathering from what you said is that the stability that I'm alluding to that men should have, she's saying that men younger are not going to have that.
Um, Most of the time, that's correct. But maturity is not dependent upon age.
Mm.
There's a lot of people who are old and lack maturity. I think it really depends on their environment, how they were raised, their family dynamic and background.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that generally speaking, that is accurate. Maturity and age are going hand, but it's not. You may have some outliers. You may have some whiz kids, and when it comes to emotional intelligence, and based on how they were raised, they could be a lot more mature than their age would indicate. So, but I think you got to just look at it from the way I always look at it. You got to be honest with yourself because you could have a man that's super mature and you're not ready to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be honest with yourself and say the same standards that you hold for somebody else, you got to hold for yourself. And relationships are kind of like a marriage is kind of like a car ride. The journey got to be fun. It ain't really about the destination. You got to be in the car with somebody because even though you know where you're going, even if you got a GPS, which could be the Quran, right? GPS don't prevent it from no flat tires.
Right. Right.
GPS don't prevent from running out of gas. Uh, GPS don't prevent traffic. GPS don't prevent car accidents, right? So you need to have somebody when you have that type of issues in the car. They're gonna be supportive. They're gonna be able to be patient with you. If you run out of gas, they gonna work with you.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. So I think that as much as you would, if you want that perfect person to come to save you, you got to be that perfect person worth saving. And if you're not that person, you got to be comfortable with giving people their time to grow and develop. You are what you attract.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mirror for your spouse. So you got to be honest with yourself that maybe you're not because you hear all the time. A woman may say, "Oh, I don't pray, but I want a man that does pray." And it's like, when you get that guy, you're gonna think he's too strict.
Let me ask you a question because you brought up a point, something that I've seen, and then after that, I want to look at some of the other comments that I got throughout the week on this topic. Question for you: What are your thoughts on sisters that? What are your thoughts on sisters that may have drifted away from their dean? now have a realization that they want to come back to the dean and be more consistent in their practice, but they're also looking to get married. Do you think it's wise for them to marry a man that's similar to them that drifted away from the dean and is now coming back and trying to be more consistent? Or do you think it's more advantageous for them to seek out someone who's already has stability in their dean, someone that can guide them and in a sense like give them direction?
The last example, 100%, because the blind can't lead the blind. That's a recipe for failure. Now, it's risky for both people. It's kind of like I always tell women you should pick men like you pick a fitness instructor or personal trainer. Personal trainer, he ain't there to make you happy. He there to make you better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's somebody that you admire, trust, and respect. Right? That's why you pick your fitness trainer because they look the part, they act the part, and as much and they about business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, personal trainers will tell you sometimes their clients can't hack it. They can't stay on they can't maintain the diet. They can't maintain the workout regimen, and they fall off. And that's the downside of that's the life of the personal trainer. It sucks when that happens, but that doesn't take away the important thing about that narrative is that it doesn't hurt the personal trainer. It
Mm-hmm.
only hurts the student.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The trainee.
So that's just the trainee. So I think that scenario is the only scenario where that will work, where somebody, a woman can use that man as a launch pad. And if he's really strong, he won't go beneath what he has his own standards. It won't impact him if he's really about his need.
Yeah.
Other scenario, when you have the blind eye leading the blind, I've rarely seen that work out.
I agree. And I think one of the problems is I don't think it's a good look for men either.
Absolutely not.
I don't think it's a good look for men because what you're also demonstrating to her is you're showing her blatant inconsistencies. And maybe not all women, but a lot of women have long memories. And so I think it's important, as I said earlier, and this chimes in and it's in alignment with what you were mentioning as well. Integrity is important, and integrity breeds stability. And so as a woman grows in her deen, she's going to understand that she wants that stability because that's what the imam or the scholar gives her. The imam or the scholar gives her some type of spiritual stability. And so she's going to want that from the man who's leading her in her life. And if you don't have that, I think that's a glaring red flag that it's going to be hard for you to remove because she's not going to see you as an authority to go to in terms of the deen.
Absolutely.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Disaster. Yeah, a man can't lead a woman who's not already led by God. They ain't going nowhere. So
yeah, and so this is and to add on to that, look, if she is led by God and wants to learn how to be led by God, and then you don't know how, then you're really showing up insufficient in one of the most important areas in her life at that moment.
For sure. Yeah, it's not gonna work. It's just I've rarely seen that scenario work out.
Yeah.
The husband and the wife have to be on the same par, like equal, where they can, build off each other as far as a certain degree of religiosity, or the man has to be slightly higher. But when I see they're both struggling, or the woman is higher, the woman is higher, that could work where if the man is really into it, because then he can she can be like the incentive, and he can eventually come into his own. Um, so I've seen that work sometimes, but the preferable one is, yeah, the man is the leader, he's the authority, and she trusts, respects, and admires him in that regard.
Yeah, and I think for me, um, maybe my memory is faulting me right now, but I can't think of an example where I've seen it work.
As far as which one?
In terms of the sister is um, strides ahead of her husband in terms of the dean. They're both coming back to the dean, and she's chosen another man to marry who was coming back to the dean as well. I can't think of, and it may be, an example or two that I've worked with. It's just not coming to my mind right now. But most cases I've seen, it hasn't worked. And what I mean by it hasn't worked doesn't mean that they didn't get married. It just means that they got married and there was some level of resentment she harbored, especially once children come in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Because then that natural inclination in that woman kicks in, and she wants her children to be raised on the dean, and she's not seeing that in the husband. So like I said, there may be a case or two that I'm missing, but I really see it work, and it's not something that I would advise at all. I've told a number of sisters. But look, let me read these comments, man, so we can get ready to wrap up.
Okay.
So stop me at any point when I read a comment that you wanna speak to. So the responses I got, one response was men bring ambition, spiritual, and career wise. So ambition spiritually and career wise. A Another comment was avoiding undignified behavior and sinful deeds, emulating the character of our beloved prophet, alayhi salam. Another sister mentioned men bring truthfulness and trustworthiness. Men provide financially and emotionally. They're caring and empathetic. Men bring accountability and holding me accountable while being compassionate. MashaAllah. When you hear that from a sister, that's
let me stop right there. I think the masculine frame is structure, routine, and discipline. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what's expected when you're dealing with a masculine person. Structure, routine, discipline. Our military is built upon that. You look at any well put together team that's successful, you have those elements in there.
mm-hmm.
So I think that, but not everybody thrives in that. Like not everybody's ready for that. So you have to be honest with yourself and say maybe you're just not, marriage material at the present moment. And you learn that you may have to do that work on yourself first to make sure that you're ready to receive it. It's kind of like getting in shape. You got to have, people need to be incentivized to be in better shape because everybody knows, what to eat and what not to eat, how much exercise to do. But knowledge is not power. Application is power. Knowing better doesn't always equate to doing better. So that's what I'm saying. Like, people have to be honest with themselves to see the kind of person that where they are. Because if you don't get the right coach and the right situation, it could be disastrous for both.
Yeah. I like this comment by Rico. He says, men bring system, order, and structure. And I completely agree with that. System, order, and structure. And to me, that's synonymous with stability, right? Because when you got a system and that system provides order and structure for how you're going to live your life, that's stability, right? So I think that's a critical piece. The next comment, and again, the sister said, men bring accountability and holding me accountable while being compassionate. I think again, and I think that requires some level of emotional maturity, emotional stability,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
To be able to hold yourself accountable, but also hold your wife accountable in a compassionate way. That requires emotional stability. I'm sorry, emotional maturity and intelligence.
For
Um,
sure.
the next one is not rigid and stern and not rigid, stern, flexible and compassionate. The next sister said his leadership is what he brings. Another sister mentioned leadership and commitment. One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of the comments that I got from sisters is this issue of men bringing leadership. And that's interesting that women are being more vocal, saying that they want that leadership, right?
Well, let me just say that it's a nice thing to say. It's different to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing that Kobe Bryant once said that makes a lot of sense, and he said, "Great players want to be coached."
Mm.
And you look at the great ones; they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And they thrive with great coaches. Because I mean, because in reality, that's one of the things about Kobe and Mike is they had a great coach. What about down in San Antonio with Pop?
yeah. So great players want to be coached. So, and that's where the challenge is because if a person is not used to being coached, i.e., by their father, who may not have been around, maybe they had some bad coaches, they may not know what good coaching looks like. To analogize it with the basketball analogy, I got to go to my homeboy, Allen Iverson, who
Practice?
always said, well, not only that, the one thing he says that he regrets is not taking the constructive criticism that
Mm.
Larry Brown had given him
Mm-hmm.
because it would have propelled him to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But he just wasn't used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, the great ones know the difference between criticism and feedback.
Yeah.
And people give you feedback all the time, and you got to understand it. It's like I was recently, you know, uh, I was recently interviewing for a new role, and it was, they said some things about me, and whether it was true or not, so I was just kind of like debriefing with some of my friends about how the interview went, and they said, whether it's true or not, Yusuf, that's how somebody perceives you. Take it as feedback and try your best to make them feel otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's just something that you have to just, take that in consideration.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so I think that the whole point is that as a woman, you have to be prepared to be coached and understand that you're going to be told no, and you have to deal with that, and you're going to have to defer to somebody else who knows more than you, and have to be comfortable with it. So that's why I always say, if you pick your man like you do your personal trainer, you ain't gonna have a problem because you want to eat pizza and donuts. Personal trainer say eat broccoli and grilled chicken, and if you don't have a lot of respect, trust, and admiration for them, you're gonna be sneaking donuts in it. And
Mm-hmm.
when they tell you to work out, I love when people, no one takes advice from fat people at the gym.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though if they're right, they still listen to them.
Right.
You're doing it wrong. Oh, okay. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. So they don't care because they want to see it.
Yeah. And I think that also it also comes back to that point where I always bring it is where a person at, and in particular this type of scenario, where's a woman at emotionally,
Yeah.
right? Because if you have emotional voids in your life, some things that you need to work through, then you're
Yeah.
going to find the excuse to not get up and go to the gym and listen to the personal trainer, right?
Exactly.
You're going to find a reason not to listen to your husband. You're going to
Right.
find a reason to not take the constructive criticism or to switch it and view it a different way.
Yeah. So what I would recommend women to do if you're in that scenario is I would say, like anything else, you know, uh, within the confines, obviously of our faith, but I would take the opportunity and submerge yourself under a good coach, even if you're unprepared, because just going through the growing pain, you don't go through things, you grow through things. There's a benefit, especially if you're with the right personal trainer. Because if you don't, because sometimes, if you, again, obviously you want to, if you got a good one, because sometimes that, paralysis by analysis or can hold, can have you stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And you may be active, but you may not be achieving anything. And at the end of the day, it's all about personal development. That's why we're here. That's what separates other creatures, our personal development through the closeness of God. So if we're not striving to get better, we're no different than a freaking sewer rat. Okay, that's what you know what I mean. Like animals eat, sleep, take care of their kids, go to work to find food and procreate. If that's all you're doing in your life, you're basically a sewer rat. But if you're trying to develop it, it's more than that.
And I think the beauty of our demon is the reality is it requires that we show and prove, right?
Yes.
It requires that yes, you have faith, but you got to put the actionables there, because if not, you can be replaced, right? You know what I mean?
Well, and let me just say this to add to that point. I just read a quote that made me think of that. To that point about the show and prove, but it says, "Your faith is only as strong as the crisis it survives."
Mm.
Dr. Miles Monroe said that. So, yeah, you got to show and improve it.
Yeah.
In the sales world, we used to say the job starts when they say no.
Yeah, yeah. I made a post once. It's an old head. Old head told me this. He said, "In life, you're either uh, entering a storm, you're heading towards a storm, entering a storm, or exiting a storm." Right? Either entering the storm, in the storm, or exiting the storm. And I found that to be true in life. But what life has also taught me though, man, is what's the critical part is how you are with yourself as you're in those three stages, right? As you're moving towards the storm, while you're in the storm, and as you come out of the storm. How are you with yourself? What's that conversation with self like? And I think that that is important for both brothers and sisters, but also for sisters in terms of what's that conversation like when you hear that criticism. But look, let me get to these. This as a comment. Sister Soul mentioned um, issue as well with the delusional world, thinking they got it all because they are women. It is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous mindset not being able to receive constructive criticism. I agree with you 100%. And I would implore you to come join the live so you can share a few thoughts on that. Sister goes on to say, Dean retrieves accountability and actions. Definitely. Dean requires accountability and action. 100%. 100%. So, my sister Soul, please come join us. Give us a sister's point of view. The floor is welcome to you. Seth, so a couple of the comments that I mentioned to you, leadership kept coming up from sisters. So I think that's commendable that sisters are saying that they're acknowledging that. One second, I'm gonna bring sister. Go ahead.
So in order to appreciate, this is really important, just for your female listeners.
Hey, Seth, one second. Hold that thought, Seth. I'm gonna bring Sister Soul in. Continue with the thought, though. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm saying that in order to evaluate leadership, you got to allow men to lead. Mm-hmm. So, Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. So sometimes women may say, well, I I don't know what leadership looks like because they don't let a man lead. They can't be. They got sometimes you got to sit on your hands. Sometimes you got to let a man fail, make mistakes, so you can see how he responds to it. Because leadership doesn't necessarily mean perfection. Leadership means accountability. It means that, hey, I made the mistake and I'm gonna take full responsibility of it. I called the wrong play. It's my fault. Not you followed the play. It was on me. That's what that's kind of like the definition of leadership. So you have to be, and from a woman's perspective, you got to see, okay, what's his style of leadership? Is it a lead by example? And so there's a lot of things, but sometimes because of the trust issues or maybe trauma, they have a hard time with allowing the man to lead, and that can be an issue. So
what one thing I would say with that though, Seth, is like I mentioned earlier, um, luck doesn't occur consistently. So you need to show up as a man with skill sets. If you show up without the skill sets, then you're relying on Hail Marys and luck.
And I'm gonna have to agree with Brother Nasir when he says that, because he says a set of skills, meaning leadership doesn't come on its own. And the brother did mention something when it comes to accountability. And I think this is a worry for many sisters, that leadership is not really like an issue for them because they're after it and they are looking forward to it. But the issue is, if you are a leader without accountability, without self-reflection, without this kind of emotional intelligence, it can be very detrimental. Because if you're not able, as a man, as a leader, to question the action or the decision maybe you took last month, or maybe the one you took yesterday, and the effect it has, maybe it didn't work out, and that's okay. And I like what the brother said. Men, we do mistakes, just like women, we do mistakes. But obviously, with the leadership, you have to allow them to make certain mistakes, and that's, I think, the hardest part for women, because of the trauma, because of the fear, because of the fear of being misled and maybe abused. Make them like, it makes that kind of how can I say, that balance of allowing the men to lead and make mistakes and be patient. That's, I think, extremely like maybe difficult. Maybe Brother Nasir, inshallah, can tell us more.
So the thing that I would add to that is I agree with you, but I think a part that we also have to acknowledge is, so there's one thing in allowing your husband to lead and being sensitive to uh, errors in judgment. Okay, we can all agree on that. But I think the deeper question is, from what I see my work with sisters, is oftentimes the response to errors in judgment may on the surface appear to be extreme, but when you dig a little bit deeper, the reason why that response is as it is, not to justify it or not, is because there were already under the surface some fears and insecurities about his leadership that she saw before she married him.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right?
And it creates a lot of resentment. So
exactly.
they make the mistake, they jump, like they jump to conclusion. They're gonna become quite aggressive, even though like maybe someone else would have been patient, thinking, okay, you know what, we can discuss it. Maybe next time we we can do it differently, and you can maybe try this technique. And because at the end of the day, I think one of the massive issues is the lack of support in that leadership. He doesn't lead on his own. He leads if you trust him. He leads if you support his decision. And like the brother Nasir said, did you trust his leadership from before? Did you trust him as a character, as a Muslim, as a man, his wisdom, his I don't know, like his intelligence? If you were already doubtful, obviously that like fake trust, it's gonna fall very quickly.
Right.
It's gonna obviously be exposed extremely quickly and create tensions.
And the best leaders listen to their subordinates. And the best coaches listen to their players. And so you also, from a man's perspective, have to make sure that you're picking women who are trusted advisors, who are women that have that bring that are assets. In America, we have a position called the first lady. She has zero legislation authority, but she sleeps next to the president every night, who has the most powerful position, arguably, in the world. So, you don't think she has influence to his ear and how to, make decisions that impact the free world? So it's almost like the analogy of, if the man is the head, the woman is the neck, right? She determines which way we go, but we have to make the decision. So we have these comparable differences, but um, it's really important that, part of leadership is going back to what I said earlier, or we said earlier rather, is the servitude, listening to your wife, listening to things like that, to ultimately your decisions impact her.
And I will add to that, and I'm happy that you talk about servitude, but as well the compassion and the fact to listen as a teamwork. Is the fact as well, very often we criticize the choice of the woman, but rarely we question the choice of the man, not choosing someone with your vision, that someone you can see is able to be on board with your ideas. She's not just going to obey. That's not enough. She needs to believe in you. She needs to believe in your vision. She needs to be on board like a teammate. It's not enough that she just obeys, because obviously she's the one that's gonna, when you're gonna be at work or outside with the kids, apply all those rules, and she better be convinced. She better be like on board with. And I think many men, because they're gonna follow. I'm not saying like all the men. Some of them we follow the looks, we follow the nifs, but they don't realize that they are building a construction. They are building obviously a dynasty, a vision, and that sometimes it's gonna obviously be full of compromise. It's gonna be full of compromise.
I think there's 2 points though. I agree with you, and I think there's a point that we rarely talk about is, the reality is a lot of women marry out of a space of fear of being alone. But what we don't really talk about is men do the same thing.
Exactly. Thank you.
Men do the same thing. Oftentimes, men are making moves out of desperation, just like women are, and it just looks differently. But it still results in you marrying someone that you're not compatible with.
And I will say to you, my brother, it's even worse when it's the man that makes that move, because he's the leader, obviously, and choosing obviously the wrong person is going to destroy completely his idea or his vision. When it's a woman, obviously the man being like in the hierarchy superior, he can maybe tame her, but a woman can rarely. I mean, she can sometimes if he's very weak emotionally, but he cannot afford to make an emotional choice.
Let me nudge you. Let me nudge you a little.
Okay.
It's only so much juice you're gonna get out of a rock.
Yes.
And so if you are expecting as a woman who's going into a marriage with a man that you've already seen red flags, and you expect to squeeze this rock and get juice out of it, in terms of squeeze the rock and get the juice of leadership, of financial stability, of vision, right? Not every man is thinking. I agree with what you mentioned earlier about it's his legacy, but not every man is thinking that way, unfortunately. So if a sister is going into a marriage with a brother that does not check off those boxes in terms of Dean, in terms of financial stability, in terms of a vision and blueprint for where he wants to take the family, that's you trying to squeeze a rock and get juice out of it. You ain't gonna get that much out of it, if any.
She can't put something in the man that God already did.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, she can't put something in him that God already did. If he didn't have that leadership, that piousness, that desire for him to want to be better, she can't put it in there. If God didn't do it, nobody can. It ain't there to not.
Yeah, I think I think a man has to. I think, Seth, this speaks to what we said earlier. Look, we brought up the example of Musa and tilling the land for 8 years. Father said, "Look, do 8, but I prefer you do 10." You, as a brother, you got to show up with the insight and the skill sets to know that tilling the land is important, and some type of skill sets, and have the motivation and the skill sets to do it. Some on the job training is acceptable, but you just can't show up looking good and looking smooth and got slick talk, and then that's sufficient. And you believe in Allah and His Messenger, and that's sufficient. Unfortunately, that's happening, and unfortunately, and I know this for sure with the work I do with sisters. There are sisters that are marrying brothers just because of looks, and he checks off of the basic box. He believes in Allah and His Messenger.
Oh yeah, oh he loves me. Oh, I love him. Just like
Yeah.
really, when I think about it, like you are marrying really for the wrong reason. And some men it's even worse when they say, "Yeah, but I love her."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not enough.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
And people like flipped a bit when I say like love and taqwa are not enough. It's the biggest investment in your life, even though you're not at the best place, but you have a clear vision. Even though you're not in the best maybe financial situation, maybe as a woman, and I think that's the worst because very often women obviously they're emotion created, there's no doubt about that. That's the way Allah has created us, and it's a blessing. When women would start to embrace the blessing and the emotional side that Allah has put in them and stop trying to act like men. I'm not talking about women surviving on men's energy because they have no choice to be the mother, the father, or because they're on their own and obviously and they're surviving on that. I'm talking about women that are really making the full choice to try to embrace like the other gender. This is not our job. And I think when people will understand that marriage is about two beautiful blessings, like women, we have our blessings, men have their own blessings. But my issue is, and I very often get misunderstood when I say men, if they realize the amount of responsibility on them, on what they bring to the table, accept it or not, you have to bring a lot more. And that's the way that Allah Azza wa Jal made you qawaman ala nisa. He made you superior. When you study the tafsir of the ayah, رجال قوام على النساء, it's about responsibility. I think we all understood that obviously they are superior in terms of authority, so you have to obey. No, actually, no. When you study the word qawaman, I'm not saying they know. I'm just saying if you study the word qawaman, it will scare so many men out there thinking that we've got it all wrong. We better get our stuff together because what Allah Azza wa Jalla is giving us as responsibility, it's unforgivable. It's like you cannot afford it. But unfortunately, the generation of today, don't forget, is the generation of the Xbox 360, PS4, PS5, completely lost the vision of building, like even just an idea that they can do better and they can lead. I understand that feminism has been an issue. It has stopped them from allowing that this place of like leadership, but in the same time, men have to take a bit of responsibility in that sense as well. Allah Azza wa Jalla has given them for a century power over like women, over families. Many of them that did great, but many of them in my culture and maybe some other like maybe my continent culture, I'm from African continent, maybe they abused it as well. And the main issue for me, I always observe, it started with the lack of taqwa. And from there, the whole pyramid just crumbled. And I'm sorry for my long answer.
No. That's a good answer. Question.
Well, I gotta run.
Okay.
Not because I put it down for a couple of hours. But go ahead. On this last, on my way out, you want to ask me a question? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Any parting things you want to say before you go?
No, thank you for the platform. It was a good conversation. Hopefully, we help the sisters and the brothers as far as just drilling down the key components. I think the how is the important part. I think just to wrap things up. Obviously, men know men, so they can help with the how. I think the leadership component is let men lead. That way you can evaluate it. It's going to be, it's difficult to see people fail, but it's important. It's better you understand that before than after the marriage. I think the integrity component is important to, make sure they can walk their talk. I think and I think to your point, the stability emotionally, that part, and that part, I think, out of all the three, I think that component probably needs the most. It's the most important, but it also has to be a certain degree of leniency on it, because we know that, men and women are struggling, or everybody's struggling with emotional intelligence, and there's all types of medications out there that people are taking. And I always feel like, again, I'm not a professional, but I feel like medications help you feel better when you should be focused on getting better.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually a mantra within CBT, wherein that we say that learning a modality helps you get better, not just feel better.
Exactly. Yeah. So we gotta hopefully get better. So inshallah, people benefit from it, and we'll be in touch, brother.
Inshallah, just do it. Just chop it up again. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Habib.
So I really like what the brother said, mashallah, when it comes to the compassion towards the mistake when it comes into leadership. I'm going to share with you a little conversation I had with a friend recently. And I was saying, like, how, like in our culture, parents always been more lenient with boys. And it used to anger me so much when I was young, because I have 4 older brothers. But today, I am not obviously making the same thing, but I'm doing it purposely. I'm going to explain. And I know I shocked my friend when I said that. I say I have to allow my eldest son to make mistakes. I have to allow my son sometimes to take decision, even if he's the younger, to take decision for his little sisters, even though like sometimes it comes with attitude, sometimes it comes with the authority that he shouldn't have, like I'm the parent. But in the same time, I am trying to grow a man, not a boy. And I have to allow him. And I was saying that to my friend, and she was saying, actually, I've never looked at things this way. I said, sometimes people are surprised when I say, oh, my son's not going to like this. Oh, my son's not, obviously, I'm a single mother, so my son's not going to like this. He's not going to like that. People are surprised. I'm like, no, I am teaching him to have this place of leadership, the responsibility that comes with it, but as well that the respect and the area of error that the brother mentioned, and I really like that, because that's exactly the conversation I had with my friend, that we have to allow those mistakes. Our son's gonna make mistakes, our husband's gonna make mistakes, and we need to prepare our daughters as well to be patient. Your husband will make mistakes in his leadership. If you trust his view, his vision, and his, like the brother was saying, his integrity, put your trust in Allah, inshallah, things can be discussed, consulted with, and hopefully progression.
I agree with that. And so I think there's 2 things. I think you're right in terms of, so what I've heard, and we come from 2 different cultures, so it may be a different response. What I've heard in terms of the leniency towards boys is, unfortunately, not what you're doing, which I think what you're doing is healthy. It's not putting the responsibility on men and on young boys. And I think that that's a problem. We're in that when you see...
Like, your perception of things is that in our culture, I come from an Arabic culture.
No. What I'm saying is your culture, I can't speak for your culture. I don't know it. But what I'm saying is what has come to me from the sisters that I work with is, growing up, the discrepancy they saw was that they had to be responsible for more of the future wife type of roles, i.e., taking care of the home, helping their mother out around the house. But the son was allowed to be free and run through the streets and not really be responsible. And
it's the same way.
Right, and that's problematic. And I think that's why, I think that's contributed to why we have a reality where men are irresponsible and emotionally immature in their early 20s.
And I respond to that.
Of course.
Because I have exactly the same vision. And I think if you ask the girls of my culture, they will tell you exactly the things. I'm going to explain to you what happened. So basically, I went back to France to see my family. I was very observant, thinking like I have 4 brothers, and mashallah, even though like through their character, like they're very charismatic people, they're very Algerian. But I try to see the fact that they are very caring towards my parents. They're still there, And mashallah, they are very receiving the transmission of culture, meaning like if my father needs anything, they'll be the first one to respond. If my mom like needs a washing machine 24 hours, it's sorted out. And I was thinking, subhanAllah, I looked at her, hey kid, how did she do it? So I started to be less critical and basically, this leniency that they gave the boys. Boys were allowed to go out. Boys didn't need to do any like shows and things like that. But I'm gonna tell you the consequences of that. Even though I hated it my whole life, but today I'm more humble and I'm more observant of who the adults they became and what my parents have as sons. They are very responsible sons, all hardworking. Because very young they start to go out, try to work, try to do things. Maybe found out things from the street as well, but they very responsible when it comes from the outside things. And my parents teach them like you have to be responsible for your sisters, you have to be responsible for you. We had to do it all. I'm not gonna lie about that. That was very hard. And I wish someone explained it to us. But what I've seen as well, the consequences of that is that my brothers were very, and are, mashallah, may Allah bless them, very hardworking people. My father used to wake them up very early. That's the thing he did. Send them out. Don't come back without like doing something. And they all very independent.
But sister, but that's counter to the point that I'm making. Your
Mm.
father waking them up, saying, "Go out the house and do something, be responsible," is young boys in training. What I'm saying is, what has come to me oftentimes is that sisters are complaining that their sons, that their brothers are able to just, okay, go outside and play and have fun,
Mm.
right?
They were spoiled.
I'm sorry, say it again.
They were spoiled.
Exactly,
They
exactly,
didn't need to do things.
exactly. And so what I see from just the sisters I come in contact with, and look, this is a small sample population. It's not the majority of sisters out there, but what I see is oftentimes men are very responsible to their families, but when it comes to their wives, that's a different story.
That's true. I have to say. I have to say
That's a different story.
that's true.
And I would suggest to you, one of the reasons that is because what we have done over time, unfortunately, is we have not put men with men at an early age and given them responsibility. Young boys should not spend every single day playing outside with other young boys. A good portion of that time as young men, they need to spend it with men. I'm sorry, go ahead. What'd you say?
Actually they should be doing more than the girls. And I think that the issue, and I have to completely agree with you, we have asked all that time the girls to overcompensate for, for the men's like and teach them the wrong way that they have to do this for them, they have to do this for them. And who teach the boys that they have to do this for the family, for their wives, for the kids like
I give you, if I can give you a good example, I give you a very good example of that. Is my mother had me washing dishes at 6. I knew how to cook a basic meal by 9, 8 or 9. And one of the the mindset that my mother instilled in me is she never wanted me to be dependent on a woman. Never. She wanted me to be able to be independent in all areas of life. The beauty in that is when your wife is a month out, 2 months out from delivering, and she's nursing, getting inconsistent sleep, maybe 30 minutes consistently each night, and then interrupted by a baby that's screaming and wanting to nurse, you're able to get in there and wash the dishes. You're able to get in there and cook a meal
and be the man.
and serve your family. Because that's what we were talking about earlier when it comes to leadership, is also serving. So
Yeah.
I'm an advocate that men need to learn how to be domestic, not because that's going to be their role, but because they're going to marry someone and that may be their role, but there's going to be times they're going to need to jump in and fill that role. That's reality.
But can I add something? That very often the way that the son's going to be educated, sorry, or the girls, is going to depend on the demographic. Can I ask you if you were like the only son, like for example, like because for me, for example, my parents were very different. They had four boys, then they had girls. So the way they brought up their sons originally was absolutely fine. My brothers used to do dishes, and I still remember until now when I was six, I think, or seven, and they brought me like a small chair. They made me like go on, step on it to start washing dishes. And since that day, I never saw them. I think that's the big mistake that the parents did. Maybe they put it all on us. We were the
No,
first.
yeah, yeah. So to answer your question, I have an older sister, 4 years older than me, and as long as my sister was in the home, we both had to wash dishes and we both had to cook.
Masha, I think that's pretty amazing. But we have in our culture this thing that associates boys doing shows with machismo, and you have many brothers still there talking about it, like talking about men doing shows like an insult. I'm not saying that it's part. I think people confuse duty and, like you said, serving a time when it's needed for your family.
Yeah,
Like the way you describe it.
yeah. And I can't tell you how grateful my wife is and how she's over the top with thanking me, right? Because the reality is, look, as a man, I want my wife when she's nursing to be in the best space mentally and emotionally. Because if she's stressed out, that's going to go through her into the milk, into the baby. I don't want a stressed out, anxious child. One of the
That's
ways
something.
the one of the ways I don't do that or create that is by alleviating her stress. How do I alleviate her stress? By acknowledging that time management for her is difficult because she's not getting adequate sleep because she's caring for a newborn. So I have the skill sets because I've been doing it since I was a kid. No problem. I know how to shift my schedule so that I can fill in this role so it makes it easy on her so that she's not stressed out. So my child isn't getting those hormones, that cortisol from his mother.
And I will add another thing: the fact that you have learned mashallah, those amazing skills, and may Allah bless your mother, the fact that you learned to cook and to clean, it made you even more appreciate what your wife does for you on every single day basis.
Yeah.
If you are completely disconnected from those shows, how can you even appreciate? Because your mother does it with never complaining. She does it like you take it as granted. But when you have to do it, this is at that time when you realize, like, oh, it's hard.
Yeah, yeah. It takes time. That's why it was a non-negotiable for me. And this may not be the same for every brother. I respect each brother's what he his vision is and what he wants in a wife. Everybody's different. But for me, it was a non-negotiable in terms of a woman being able to be a homemaker, being able to cook, clean, and take care of the home. I knew for me, I needed that because it took so much time. It is a full-time job. So I need so I knew it because I lived it. I went through undergrad single. So I knew how much time it took, right? And I know the care and attention, if you really want quality meals and you want your home to look peaceful and it has that kind of ambiance of warmth, that takes time. It takes energy. It takes you being in a good space. So for me, it was a non-negotiable that the woman that I married had to be okay with that. That's a role that she wanted to take on. And so because I knew it, because I had lived it. But a little side, if I can, a little caveat,
Yes.
a little hack for brothers. The other benefit in learning how to cook and clean when you're young and
Teaching
having
the
that's,
sons, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Or teaching the sons, their sons. Because men are very hesitant to teach their sons. This is what we should encourage brothers to teach their sons how to
Yeah, yeah,
cook
yeah.
their food.
Yes, 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 for sure, for sure, for sure. Yes. One of the benefits in knowing how to cook and clean and learning that at a young age and mastering it by the time you're of marriage material, it also gives you a level of gravitas, because you're not in a space of neediness. So it's really, you can approach a woman from the standpoint of, I want you in my life, but I don't need you in my life.
Independency, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So just a small hack for brothers, because that allows you to move in a room with a woman with a level of gravitas, a level of humility, but air, that I want you in my life. I don't need you.
And the woman will see it. She will feel
Exactly.
it. She will say it even
Exactly.
better. Thinking like, I'm gonna do better than what he does for himself.
That's the
So
point I was going to come to. And see, I didn't even get there yet, and you already said it. Women can sense that level of gravitas in a man. They can sense it. That confidence. Women can sense it. And confidence comes from you having the capacity to do something. So, for any brother listening, teach your son how to wash dishes, cook and clean, and be independent.
and I like what one of the comments was mentioning the importance of autonomy. And it's about being autonomous.
Mhm.
And I think one of the greatest skills of a leader, how can you be a leader if you do not know how to take care of yourself? How can you take care of your family if you do not know how to take care of yourself? And I think I'm not saying that women they should be homemaker. They should concentrate on that because Allah gave them this beautiful ability. It doesn't mean they are restricted only to do that.
Mhm,
They are
mhm.
able to do great things, but they have to learn to prioritize on with the greatest skills. Meaning that if a child comes, obviously the priority has to be the child, and there is no question about that. And I think obviously feminism have tried to disturb our sense of priority. But alhamdulillah, fitra is always here. As mothers should remind us where our priority lies.
Mhm.
But if you want to allow your wife to be a beautiful mother or a beautiful wife for you and to welcome you, you have to support her in her role as well. And you
Agreed.
can be helpful in times of crisis, being able to be that leader, not just outside, but inside as well. Say, okay, this is how we're going to organize the house. I'm going to support my family. And I don't understand how men find it like emasculating, or I just don't get it. Yes, because the society may be saying that it's a duty. No, we're not talking about duty. We are talking about leadership, like caring, protecting. The way you were describing how you're providing safety to your wife, why she's nursing your child. And that's super important because the way she's going to see you is as a protector, you know?
Right. Right. And one of the, look, I another hack for men. If you One of the best things you can do is protect a woman's peace. And the way you do that is, one, having emotional stability, but creating an atmosphere in your home of order, structure, and peace. When you can do that, and that leads into what I mentioned earlier in terms of the value that men bring to marriage. If I had to summarize it into one thing, it would be stability.
Wow.
If a man brings emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual stability to a woman, he got her.
You got it. But like I said, like everything started to decline because I really do believe that a man that is able to be spiritually stable, he imposes himself a routine, he sticks to it, he has what he has to do with his family, teach them spiritually, everything will fall out naturally in terms of his responsibility. And a woman that knows she can trust a man, she will, I'm not saying all the time, but naturally knows her place. Some men think it's subhanallah, and that's the issue when you don't understand the word empowerment. They want to use power like force, but that's not what's going to make her more obedient or more submissive. Is to be the role model. And I really liked like a podcast I was listening recently, and he was talking about the importance of the energy. Meaning, if a man comes angry at home, like from work, you know how the energy shifts in the house. Like how if you want to bring chaos, it's very easy for him to bring chaos because he's obviously at the top of that pyramid. But if he comes at in the house. It brings peace, a smile, a goodness. You know how he spreads down and how he shower everyone inside the house, the wife, the kids, the whole energy like shifts. And I think it's time we teach our men how important they are and how able they are and how great they are when they do the great things because they can change the whole game. We have told that to the wife, to the woman, the whole like past like 20 years maybe. But I think it's really time we give that space to men, like, and obviously because they're coming from far, they're gonna make mistakes because maybe no one told them that, sorry, when they were young. So they have to learn it like it's a learning curve, like, it's not like they're being brought up like as great leaders because no one allowed them to be. And no.
Hence what we were saying earlier in terms of parents allowing the son to just go out and play and not have no responsibility, right? And the thing that you listen to in terms of energy, that speaks to the point that I was saying. One of the key things, a hack that you can do to have your woman like looking at you with admiration is if you can protect the peace. And one of the ways that you protect the peace is you create the atmosphere in the home. You can dictate.
It's funny to see how many men are complaining about the lack of respect, like, in the couple and from their wife and from the spouse. Like, because very often respect is their love language. It's the way they receive love and the way they feel it. Like, when their wife respect them, listen to them, and admire them. That's the way they feel love. But the issue is they do not understand that respect has to be earned. Show her the skills that you have. Show her that you are able to compromise and sacrifice. Obviously, we all know about the duties of the woman to listen and obey, but make sure you are giving her the right directions. Today, like, so many women have been like, and I'm one of them, that really strongly believe like obedience and servitude and all that. But when you give it to the wrong person, and this hence the title, like, what the value do men bring, and it goes back again to how you choose your spouse, is very important because no matter what, he's going to be that leader, a way or not, a good or bad one. You choose, like, so yeah, it just goes back like to that servitude thing, but to that respect that all men want, but in the same time, they do not know the price of it.
I think the only adjustment I would make to what you said is I don't think respect is earned. I think respect is retained. And so, meaning, when you go into a marriage, so my advice to any woman is this: if you don't respect him before you marry him, you should not marry him. Period.
Thank you.
Period.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
after you give him that base level of respect, it's on him then to retain that respect by showing you integrity, by showing you consistency, by creating the stability in the life of the marriage. That's his role. That will retain the respect. But you but going into the marriage, if you do not respect him, since you shouldn't marry him. And oftentimes what happens is you see the red flags, what makes you have suspect respect for him, but you still go through with it because you're fearful of being alone. Your thoughts? You said there were comments?
Yeah, saying that women tend to kind of test a man to see if she can submit to him. But those tests has to be made before. And if you see like you cannot submit to him, I so many times I see like sisters contacting me, explain the type of relationship they're in and the struggles and the fights and the swear. I'm like, why would you? Because you are in emotional need. That's why you want to get married. But if you're not able to go in a relationship to follow a vision or to build a vision together, depending on how the people are in terms of character, I don't understand the point. Like,
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Built off of that, I have a biasy. I think not these low level tests, and not low level tests, but serious dysfunctional tests. I think that rarely happens. I think that rarely happens. I think a woman rarely tests to a significant degree. Yeah. I think a woman rarely tests a man, her husband, to a significant degree if she admires him and respects him. And I think a part of that is the fear of losing him.
Is it the fear of losing the vision that she's got of him because he's not tested? And I
No,
think
I think it's the where I'm going with that is when a woman admires and values the man that's in her life, she's not going to play Russian roulette and jeopardize losing him by testing him to a significant degree.
but do you think it's a good or bad thing?
What, to not test him?
Yeah.
I think it's wise. But let me tell you this. Depending on, and I mean this with all humility, depending on the
Yeah.
quality of man that you're dealing with. Because I'm gonna be very straight with you. I love my wife, but she's known as to test me.
Mm.
Like real talk. I love her, but she understands there's 7 billion out here. So like I'm gonna do my best to be your loving husband,
I
but don't cross certain lines.
no
Right. And so I've never.
relationship with you already made the proof, my brother. You're already caring, providing, and you know what I'm saying?
Right. So that's my
There's
point.
no need of
So that's my
there's
point.
no need of test.
That's my point. My point is, I think, and mashallah, I thank Allah for the woman in my life. The point of what I'm trying to say is that level of admiration is there, so that I don't experience any of these tests and type of stuff.
I'm not talking about the PT test, like like the conversation that you have previously in the marriage. You already made the fact that she admires you and respects you prove the fact that you passed the test, like directly and indirectly. You already have been tested by showing up to the plate, by being there, by
Mm.
doing all that were needed. So those tests are not necessary anymore. But I'm talking like, how can you? What do you advise sisters to do when it comes to the conversation with the brothers and how they can test those
Uh,
skills?
so let me clarify. I think
Oh,
you and I are having, you, I, and whoever put the comment, I think we need to clarify what we mean by test. Because I think you and I are talking about two different things. You're talking about assessing, testing to see if he has the metal, he has the integrity that he can lead me. That's the test that I think I'm hearing from you. I
is it
wasn't
just
thinking
because?
that. The test that I was thinking is sometimes women will pick a fight. Sometimes women will try to test to see if he's going to respond a certain way. This is what I
That's
mean.
very mental. No, no, no. That's like no.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Those type of tests, I don't have to deal with. I never had to deal with it because and the point I was trying to make is a woman doesn't do that with a man she respects and admires,
Exactly.
right?
But second, like play those like testing games. Maybe in the first year of marriage, I'm talking from a point of view when sometimes because some sisters, practicing sisters, talking to practicing brothers, trying to keep it halal 100%. And I think they misunderstood the fact that keeping it halal doesn't stop you from asking very directed questions or
Mhm.
testing the water
Mhm.
without like obviously falling into sins.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean like, and I think that's maybe the point we need to discuss, like how are we able to test certain personalities
Yeah,
with like the boundaries, because sometimes, and I can tell you, my brother, because I've seen it. I saw very practicing people, mashallah, getting married, and unfortunately, the first year of marriage was used to those, even for the brother side, like giving like crazy orders to the woman, trying to test her, put her in like in situation to see like to tame her, like, but with really extreme measures. And I'm thinking, this is really the wrong mindset to go into marriage. Like, we're not here to test each other. We're here to support each other and to build each other. The testing is before.
Mhm.
So,
I agree with you. So I mentioned this earlier. I'll mention it now. When with the sisters that I work with, Um, these are the five things that I give them. Three, they can be, I advise them to be inflexible on. And the other two, I advise them to be flexible on. The first one is knowledge of the dean and application. Be inflexible on that. The second thing is financial stability, inflexible. The third is blueprint, vision. Where is he going? Where is he taking you as a family? You want to be inflexible with those, meaning that those have to be there. The other two, you can be flexible. So the fourth one is fitness, right? Like he doesn't need to be a six pack, but he needs to at least be conscious of what he consumes and he exercises at least a couple times out of the week, right? And then the last one is fitness, and then the last one is finesse, right? Finesse. He has to have some level of suave, some level of dappiness, something that gets you intrigued by him. So those two you can be flexible with. The first three, I don't advise you being flexible with them. And so this gets to the point of your question. What I found is sisters are very flexible with the first three and inflexible with the other two.
That's true. But I see the upside down. I see people being very flexible with the first three, but they want the look, but they want like the outside appearances and the good word.
Yeah. He talk good in the ear, look good. Yeah.
But the other things like, yeah.
Right. So if I'm gonna just bring it back. So the point is, when you're talking about having to test, you can limit the amount of tests you need to do if you make sure you get those first three in order.
Thank you. You make it simple.
Yeah.
Easier. Yeah.
But oftentimes, that finesse, he got the gift of gab, and he looked good. It make you forget about testing, and then at the last minute, right before you about to sign the paper and you get your direct deposit of the mahar, then you want to try to quickly test him.
But yeah, Brother Nasir, I would tell you again, it goes back to the theme. Because of the situation, the way we meet the people, and the non-Islamic maybe rules, I mean, the fact that the Islamic rules are not respected, it's allowing the men to flatter with his finesse, with his appearances. And because if you do it the right way and you ask straight away those massive points, like those straight points, where's your financial thing? It's a filter. We don't even need to get to the second point, like to the flexible point. We don't have, we're not there yet, If those compatibility are established, we can talk about looks, we can talk about like all the other like finesse things. They just cherries on the cake, to be honest.
Agreed.
But because those things doesn't make last a marriage, but they make it like even more enjoyable. Let's just be honest there about it. But the issue is the fact that we get into a relationship not in a halal way. We get flattered, emotionally dependent, needy, and then we question those things. But it's too late. You are in the spider web already, and you're not able to be objective. I don't know if it's the English word.
No, it is. You're right. Because you drunk off love. You can't be objective.
Exactly. And you're losing that, you're losing that objectivity. And that's the biggest danger. And the same happens to men.
I agree.
Like, make a woman move in front of them and they forget like all the needs and all the plans goes out of the window. Oh no, she will follow. But you don't require her only to be a woman. She needs to be a woman as well of vision, not as strong as you. But if you do not have this compatibility, how on earth is she going to be able to obey you? And I see so many women abroad, and I'm sure you will agree, that goes into like a relationship. The man sometimes says, I want this. Oh, yeah, I will be that for you. Oh, yes, I will be this for you. But they lie to themselves. They lie to the person they're talking to in marriage, like courting. And then, like, 1 year into the marriage, like, no, this is not who I am. Like I'm just saying, like sometimes sisters as well can be players. Men are players, But sisters as well are paying, and they need to take accountability on that as well.
Agreed. So look, there's a comment here where it says brothers' points are assumed. Oh, so I guess she's saying my point. The brother points are assuming women want a man to lead them.
I
Uh,
will make a point after you about that. So
so,
I'll let you.
so I personally, any brother that would come to me for premarital counseling, if I would not advise him to marry a woman that does not want him to lead. Period. I would not advise him to entertain it. Now, if he does, then we need to have a discussion on what that's going to look like. But I would not advise any man to marry a woman that does not want him to lead the family. That just um, yeah, that doesn't sound
It's just
um,
not non-flexible, like you said.
yeah.
It's just not something that is negotiable. I understand, but I hear as well, my brother, and please cut me if I'm wrong, but I hear many brothers talking about like, I want to be a leadership. I want her to submit. I want her to obey. And when you ask them about the blueprint and the vision, what you're gonna bring to the table, what you're gonna do, like I think they are more focused on the fact they want to lead, to know, than to learn how. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not a natural skill. And I will disagree as well a bit with the brother, because when you talk deeply with the sisters, even the one that appears that doesn't want to be led, sorry, actually they want to be led. It's just the fact they have never met a real leaders. And it's not even a question when you come with a table with a beautiful plan, with guidance, with wisdom. Naturally, who is the like? No one's gonna rebel against a good plan, a plan that works, a plan that she'll be happier. No one. The issue is, of course, that maybe the first attitude you're going to see from them, maybe from the misunderstanding of the leaders in their life or the bad example they have led, but naturally, Allah Azza wa Jalla created fitra in the woman, in the child as well. It's just like saying, like, no, every child wants to obey their parents. Sometimes they just don't understand, like, the plan. And men sometimes they are more focused on the fact that is she submissive than even questioning exactly the title. What do they bring to the table? And naturally, a woman, if you show her the plan, your vision, the blueprint, I'm on board. I'm on board. Like, I don't know, like maybe you have something
No, I agree with you.
with your own experience, like talking to the sisters and counseling and doing a great job out there.
So
What's your experience like?
so one thing, a sister is asking to join. Sis, all you have to do is send me a request and you can join. You'll see the plus at the bottom and a video type.
You can even invite, you go to the participant, you find her name, and you can even like just invite her.
I'm sorry, where do I go?
You go to the participants. I don't know if you have the list of participants. Normally, if you click on her comment, you should be able to no, sorry, at the bottom of your screen, you have a
Mhm.
little camera. You click on it, then you type her name, and she should come up. Like obviously, it will offer you only the people that are on the live.
Uh,
You know the little camera option.
yeah.
You click on
Okay.
it.
There we go. I just sent the request.
Okay,
Um, so the point I was going to say to, yeah, I lost my point of what I was going to say to what you said.
so talking about the fact that deeply, a woman is happy to be led. The issue is by who, and is the issue to reassure her that you know what you're doing. Because the brother was saying that so many women, like like they don't always want to be led.
Yeah. Oh, okay. If you don't mind, so this is what came to mind for me. So another hack for brothers. You know, it's easier for you if you find a woman whose father has done the heavy lifting for you, right? So if her father was someone who um, was a good leader, she will be receptive to your leadership if you have quality leadership, right? He will lay the foundation for you to come in and lead. But the flip side of that is if you don't have good leadership skills, it's going to be glaringly obvious to her, right? So that's a hack. If you can, choose a sister that father has done heavy lifting for her. However, if you don't find that, and the sister's father did not lead by example, then make sure you choose a sister whose life has taught her, has made her touch the stove a few times. This is why, and I know within the community, my view is maybe not the uh, prevalent view, but this is why I personally um, think marrying divorcees, uh, there's benefit, right, to a man's life in marrying a divorcee. And one of the reasons for that is in my work. I'm biased, right? Because I speak with majority Muslim women. A lot of them are divorcees. By the time they come to me, their hand has been smacked so many times by life that the humility is there, and they want a different direction in life. They want leadership. And so I see the utility in marrying a divorcee, because if our father didn't do the heavy lifting for you, the challenges and adversities of life have done the heavy lifting for you. And so that's a great opportunity for you to then come in and demonstrate leadership in her life. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
you talked about a very important point. I will make 2 points, inshallah, so the sister inshallah can intervene as well. Um, you talked about